there, wake up. It's Means Morning News. It's just after 11 a.m. on the East Coast in Washington, D.C. I'm the host, Sam Sachs, and it's that Friday show. Friday the 13th show, actually. Yeah, spooky. And to honor that, I'm going to say the 12 most frightening words a conservative can hear. I'm going to really scare the shit out of them this morning. You ready? I'm from the government, and I'm here to take your gas stove. 7,000 nurses in New York City are back on the job after ending their 3-day strike with a win. The New York State Nurses Association accepted a tentative agreement to end the work stoppage on Thursday morning. The deal still needs to be ratified by rank-and-file members, but it does address the issues that provoked the picket. Under the agreement, nurses would receive a 19% pay increase, but most importantly, the hospitals Mount Sinai and Montefiore committed to hiring new nurses to remedy dangerous staffing ratios that made it difficult to provide adequate care to patients. Montefiore said it would add 170 new nursing positions. In other labor news, yet another union win on a college campus. Graduate student workers at Northwestern University voted to unionize, and the ballot wasn't even close, with 1,644 students voting in favor and only 114 voting against. Just asking for a wedgie. The union will be an affiliate of the United Electric Radio and Machine Workers of America. The student workers are seeking 5 things during collective bargaining: a pay increase, professional standards in labs and classrooms, a formal process to address misconduct, improved health benefits, and financial support for international students. The organizing campaign began way back in 2016. Last November, more than 2,000 union card signatures were presented to the university, but instead of voluntarily recognizing the union, Northwestern forced a vote on it, which they lost big time. Yale, Harvard, Boston U, MIT, University of Illinois. Each week, it seems like student workers at a new university are winning a union, and it whips. The kids are all right. So this was one of my favorite stories of the week. Mega bank JPMorgan Chase got duped good. According to a lawsuit filed last month, the bank is suing the founder of a startup college financial aid website called Frank that JPMorgan purchased last year. The suit alleges that the company's founder, Charlie Javis, and another executive at the company lied about their subscriber base. The site helps students navigate applying for college financial aid. It was pitched as an Amazon for higher education, whatever the hell that means. The bank claimed that it, quote, paid $175 million for what it believed was a business deeply engaged with the college-aged market segment with 4.265 million customers. Instead, it received a business with fewer than 300,000 customers. Wow. Owned. Sounds like someone didn't do their due diligence. Although it does appear that Javis went to great lengths to embellish how many users she had on the website. Here's how Gizmodo reported what went down after the bank asked for all the records on the site's users prior to the sale. Quote, after a Frank engineer refused to create doctor data, this list was created for $18,000 by an unnamed data science professor in New York City, based on the list of 300,000 actual customers. At the same time, the suit alleges that Frank's chief growth officer, Olivier Amar, reached out to a student marketing company and purchased a list of 4.5 million student names, addresses, and phone numbers for $105,000. Hey, sometimes you got to spend money to make money. Javis is countersuing, claiming that the bank used the allegations to force her out of a role in the company that came with a $20 million retention bonus. Funny kicker to this story is that Javis was featured on the Forbes 30 Under 30 list in 2019, meaning she's now the third person in recent memory to make the list who went on to be accused of massive fraud. Joining up with fellow girl boss Elizabeth Holmes and crypto schlub Sam Bankman-Fried. I don't know. I don't want to say that Javis didn't earn her place on the list because scamming Jamie Dimon out of $175 million, that's quite the accomplishment. Since the 1950s, the U.S. oil and gas industry has been aware that the product it's selling has harmful effects on the planet. In 2015, investigative journalists obtained a trove of internal documents from oil giant ExxonMobil showing that that firm was aware of global warming going back to the 1970s, yet continued pumping the shit out of the ground for profit. Well, the new study further analyzed the ExxonMobil documents to glean just how much the company knew about global warming 50 years ago and how that knowledge contrasted with public statements. The research was published in the journal Science this week. Reading from the report, quote, "Our results show that in private and academic circles since the late 1970s and early 1980s, ExxonMobil predicted global warming correctly and skillfully. Using established statistical techniques, we find that 63 to 83% of the climate projections reported by ExxonMobil scientists were accurate in predicting subsequent global warming." Now, all the while, ExxonMobil and other fossil fuel companies were claiming that the science was inconclusive. And the report notes, quote, "The company's public statements about climate science contradicted its own scientific data." New research could be useful evidence in the lawsuits filed against the oil giant, claiming that it misled investors and deceptively marketed its goods, knowing full well the damage they caused, kind of like the cigarette companies. And it is pretty wild to look at these charts that ExxonMobil made almost 50 years ago, and each one nails global temperature increases. They look exactly like the charts that are put out by the United Nations now. Oil executives looked at the data, looked at the profits they were making, and then made a choice to just keep making the profits. Science be damned. I guess they also knew they'd be long gone by the time the shit really hits the fan. Weird that they didn't care about their kids or grandkids, though. The Office of the Director of National Intelligence released its annual report on UAPs, or Unidentified Anomalous Phenomenon, formerly known as Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon, formerly known as UFOs. The Means Morning News style guide requires me to just call them UFOs. I made the style guide. Anyway, the report is required by federal law, and the big takeaway from it is that the Pentagon is studying way more UFOs than previously disclosed. Prior to 2021, the department said it was looking into 144 sightings, but this latest report reveals that since then, there have been 247 new UFO observations sent up the chain of command, predominantly coming from U.S. Navy and Air Force pilots. On top of that, there were another 119 reports of older sightings that are now being examined. So that brings the total number of UFO incidents to 510. The report adds that of those 366 new sightings, more than half have been dismissed as unremarkable, most likely balloons or drones, stuff that really didn't display unusual flight characteristics. But that still leaves more than 170 other sightings of objects doing things that just baffle witnesses and investigators. Pentagon did express some concern about flight safety related to UFOs. The report stated that they, quote, pose a safety of flight and collision hazard to air assets, potentially requiring aircraft operators to adjust flight patterns in response to their unauthorized presence in the airspace, operating outside of air traffic control standards and instruction. So far, there have been no adverse health effects associated with an encounter with the UAP, something that lawmakers wanted the Pentagon to look into specifically. And at no point does the report suggest that UFOs could be alien in origin. In fact, it's speculated that some could be, quote, potential adversary collection platforms. Probably the most interesting part of the report is a sentence at the very beginning of it that read, quote, Additional information is provided in the classified version of this report, which I guess I have to go down to Mar-a-Lago to find. Or maybe Joe Biden's garage. Folks.
It's just a blessing to be free again.
Yeah, right, I was in over there, they stabbed, got hit, but
How many times?
3 right in the same spot. They almost hit the main vein right there, but again, it all comes with the territory. Just, you gotta do what you gotta do to survive, you know?
I know one thing. This is like really overwhelming for me. It's too much. I'm ready to lay down and close my eyes.
I ain't been asleep all night.
I ain't slept since yesterday.
Answer the phone.
Who else they call home?
We're heading on the end of the line. There ain't many people from here left. The neutrals took over. So we gotta keep fighting them. So I've done everything there is for survival. I'm born to die, so I'm gonna get all the gusto out of this little body that I got. Big old rat. I love it when I nail them. Neutrals is a real threat to the whole country. You ever heard a neutral holler? Wah, wah.
It's been a fantastic week for Rich Dickery. Let's look at some of those nominations on social media. And we begin where we always begin, with Rona nominating all the goddamn landlords. Few different landlords nominated this week, actually. Slumlords at the Donaldson Group were nominated for forcing residents of an apartment building in Fairfax, Virginia, to live in squalid, inhumane conditions. Also a nomination for Aurora, Colorado landlord Terrence Doyle, who hired a private security firm to evict his tenants at gunpoint. What the fuck, dude? Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg also nominated, twice in fact. Not sure how rich he is, but he's definitely been terrible this week. Strong nomination for New York City hospital CEOs who raked in millions of dollars, but forced their nurses to go on strike before agreeing to safer staffing ratios. Pathetic. Moderna CEO Stephanie Bancel's name was put forward as the company plans to jack up the price of its COVID vaccine by over 400%. Also got a couple nominations for last week's Rich Dick, Vince McMahon, who made his return to WWE official. Rumors are he plans to sell the company off to the Saudis. 2 nominations for Canadian billionaire and grocery magnate heir Galen Weston Jr., and a nomination for Oprah. Not sure what she did, but I won't dispute it. Damn, y'all were busy this week. But in the end, there was only one person who could get the dishonors. This week's Rich Dick is Collier Gwen. Thanks to Geriatric Femboy on Twitter for the nomination. And I gotta say, we've been doing this segment for years now, and this was the easiest choice we've ever had. A clear-cut Rich Dick this week. And for those who don't know who Collier Gwen is, he's the guy with the hose. Video was posted online showing Gwen blasting a homeless woman with a hose on the streets of San Francisco. It's despicable. I don't know how rich Gwen is, but he owns a ritzy art gallery, which is rich enough for me. Once the video went viral and his art dealership started getting slammed with negative reviews, Gwen apologized for the incident. But during an interview with the San Francisco Chronicle, he tried to justify what he did.
After countless times of trying to help her, countless that can be researched and shown, that trying to wash down the street and clean up her mess, and she became just completely belligerent and out of her mind again, that at that point, I turned the hose on her. Guess what? It woke her up. She moved. And that's what she needed to do.
Oh, so you're not sorry. I'm honestly taken aback a bit over how big of a prick this guy is.
How long would you say the hose, like what we see it in the video, is like a 10 or 12 second snippet? How long was the hose running?
I don't know. It's one of those things that I don't know. I really don't remember. I mean, was it a minute? Was it 30 seconds? It was trying to get her to move and trying to help her.
For a city known to be hostile to homeless people, to distinguish yourself as the most hostile, that's quite a feat. Collier Gwen, this week's Rich Dick. Time to crack open the archives for this week in working class history. And we begin in 1912 with the Bread and Roses strike. It involved thousands of mostly female textile workers in Lawrence, Massachusetts, fed up with decades of exploitation, dangerous working conditions, and poor housing. They turned off their machines and walked off the job. The final straw was a reduction in their wages. As many as 20,000 workers would eventually join the strike, standing off against powerful mill owners and police riots. Striking workers established services for themselves to sustain the strike, including soup kitchens and nurseries. 2 months later, the strike ended, with the bosses agreeing to most of the demands. Moving on to 1919, when this week the government of Peru agreed to give workers an 8-hour workday. Following a general strike that started the month before, authorities initially resisted the strike, but after the city of Lima was shut down and businesses were forced to close and open clashes in the streets with police, the president at the time, Jose Pardo, caved. He issued a decree granting the 8-hour workday to everyone in the country. Let's fast forward now to 1948, when thousands of miners began a strike in Cyprus. The workers were employed by the U.S.-owned Cyprus Mining Company and demanded pay increases, overtime pay on Sundays, repairs to their living quarters, recognition of a labor dispute committee, and the rehiring of fired miners. Strike was notable because it brought together both Greek and Turkish Cypriots in a common fight. Strike lasted 266 days, during which the mining company owners begged the Cypriot government to fight the alleged communists involved in the work stoppage. In the end, though, the workers secured their demands, including a significant pay raise, improved working conditions, and reduced working hours. And we finish up now in 1973, when this week, that year, a strike began at the Coronation Brick and Tile Factory in Durban, South Africa. It was a strike over low wages, but would soon grow into something much larger. Within months, over 100,000 mostly Black African workers joined the work stoppage, protesting not just against poor working conditions and wages, but apartheid itself. The labor action was a critical step forward toward building a strong trade union movement, one that was multiracial, and that served as a key force in the struggle against apartheid. To learn more about any of these stories or any other events that happened in history, check out the Working Class History Project on Twitter, listen to the podcast, and subscribe on Patreon. Back with more next week. Okay, friends, the show ends with another sunrise from Florida. Hey, they don't call it the Sunshine State for nothing. This one was sent in by Brian in an airplane somewhere above Tampa. Enjoy. Thank you, Brian, and thank you at home for watching, and thanks to the team behind the scenes. Please subscribe to our YouTube and podcast channels if you haven't already. One day capitalism will fall. Until then, we'll be right here. See you next week.